The royal palace of the Ailyari Empire was a place of shining crystal walls and endless golden halls. Every step echoed with power and pride. Inside the grand throne room, nobles in long flowing robes gathered to see their queen. Servants stood, at the edges, silent and alert. At the very center, on a tall seat carved from living stone, sat Queen Saralira, ruler of the Ailyari. Her silver crown shimmered under the glowing light. Her violet eyes were sharp, and her presence filled the room with authority. This day was supposed to be quiet, just a normal council meeting. But soon, silence broke into whispers as the great doors opened wide. Everyone turned their heads. Walking. Down the long carpet was Princess Liari, the queen's only daughter. She was tall and graceful, with emerald green skin and silver hair that marked her royal bloodline. But the noble's attention was not on her alone. At her side walked a figure that looked completely out of place. He was taller than most Ailyari, but lacked their shining colors. His skin was pale compared to theirs, his hair dark brown, and his clothes simple compared to the decorated silks of the court. His boots were dusty, his jacket rough, and there was no mark of nobility on him. A ripple of confusion spread through the throne room. Nobles whispered to each other, their voices sharp with curiosity and mockery. Who is that outsider? He does not belong here. Why would the princess bring such a creature into the royal court? Queen Saralira narrowed her eyes. Her voice carried across the hall like the sound of a sword being drawn. Who's that? Her question was not just curiosity, it was a demand, a challenge. Princess Liari stopped walking, but her hand remained linked with the stranger's arm. Her face was calm, but her voice was strong. The human I wedded. The throne room fell into silence so heavy it felt like the air itself froze. The queen's eyes widened for the first time in years. Nobles gasped loudly. Some nearly dropped their jeweled cups. A human, one noble muttered in disbelief. They are a primitive race hardly worth notice, said another. Unthinkable. A royal bloodline joined with an outsider? Shameful! But Princess Liari ignored their whispers. She held her head high. The human beside her stayed quiet, but his back was straight and his eyes steady. The queen slowly rose from her throne. You dare bring a human into my court and claim him as your husband? Her voice was icy. Yes, mother, Liari replied. This is Captain Elias Kane of Earth. He is my husband. I chose him, and I will not deny it. The queen studied him with cold eyes. Step forward, human. Elias Kane obeyed. He walked up the long carpet, the eyes of dozens of alien nobles drilling into him. Though he felt the weight of their judgment, he did not falter. His steps were calm, his chin held high. When he stopped before the throne, he bowed respectfully. Your Majesty, he said in a steady voice. His words echoed strangely in the great hall. Few had heard the human tongue before, but his effort to speak in their language surprised them. The queen tilted her head. You know who I am. Do you know what you have done? Yes, Elias answered. I married your daughter. I did so, with honor and with love. I stand here because she wished it, and because I would not hide from truth. Gasps spread again. Some nobles laughed bitterly at his boldness. Love? One sneered. As if humans know such things. Honor? A species that crawls in the dirt? Another added, but Princess Liari stepped forward quickly, her eyes flashing. Enough! None of you were there when pirates raided the colony world of Vera. None of you saw how he fought, how he stood when others fled. Elias Kane saved my life with nothing but courage and a broken rifle. The queen's gaze sharpened. Tell me, human, is this true? Elias's eyes did not waver. It is true, though I did not do it for reward. I did it because it was right. The nobles murmured again, but this time some looked less certain. His words were simple, yet they carried. Wait. The queen lifted her hand for silence. You claim courage. You claim honor. But do you know what it means to join with the royal bloodline of the Aeliari? Do you understand the weight of our throne, our empire, our name? Elias met her gaze directly. I may not know all your traditions. I may not be of your kind, but I know loyalty. I know duty. And I know that I will stand with Laari no matter the cost. The hall grew silent again. Even those who mocked him now stared with a hint of respect. But the queen's face remained unreadable. We shall see, she said finally. Her voice echoed like a closing door. For now, you remain here, human. If you are truly what you claim, then you will prove it. If not, your union with my daughter will be dissolved, and you will be cast out. The princess's fists clenched, but Elias simply bowed again. I accept your judgment, your majesty. The queen sat back down on her throne, her long robe folding like waves around her. Then let it be so. This council is ended. With a sharp gesture, she dismissed the room. Nobles left in groups, whispering furiously. Servants bowed and retreated. Princess Laari and Elias walked out together, side by side, heads high. But behind them, the weight of suspicion and doubt followed like shadows. Flashback, how they met later. That night, in the quiet chambers of the palace, Princess Laari sat beside Elias. The moonlight of the twin moons fell through the crystal windows. We're brave today, she whispered. He gave a small smile. Your mother was scarier than the pirates. Laari laughed softly, then her eyes grew distant. Do you think she will ever accept us? Maybe not today, Elias said, but one day. Not with words, but with actions. They'll see. Laari reached for his hand, remembering the day everything began. Months earlier, she had traveled in disguise to a colony world. The colony was under attack from space raiders. Buildings burned, civilians fled, and soldiers fell one after another. Laari had been cornered in the chaos, cut off from her guards. Then she saw him, a human with a broken rifle, blood on his arm, and fire in his eyes. He charged the raiders without hesitation, creating a gap for survivors to escape. When Laari stumbled, he shielded her, shouting for her to run. Instead, she stayed with him. Together, they fought back, side by side. By the time reinforcements arrived, the raiders were defeated, and Laari knew she had met someone unlike any alien she had ever seen. Someone who valued life more than power, who fought without fear of death. From that day forward, she chose him. And now, in the heart of the Empire, she had declared it for all to hear. As the night deepened, Elias looked out the window at the vast city below. He could see the glowing towers, the moving ships, the endless alien lights. It was a world far from Earth, a place where he was unwanted. But when he looked at Laari, he felt no fear. He had faced pirates, and he had faced death. Now he would face nobles, politics, and even the queen herself, because he was human, and humans never quit. The morning after the court had been shaken, the royal palace felt heavy with whispers. Every corridor Elias Kane walked through carried eyes on him. Servants bowed to the princess, but stared coldly at him. Nobles paused in their steps, their voices dropping to sharp murmurs when he passed. Humans were known in the galaxy, but they were not respected. To most Aeliari, Earth was a small world, barely stepping into the stars. Its ships were slower, its weapons older, its people considered. Fragile. And now one of them stood inside the throne palace, tied to their princess by marriage. Inside the council chamber, Queen Saralira sat with her closest advisors. Her eyes glowed with frustration. "This marriage cannot stand," said Lord Varen, a noble with long golden robes and sharp silver horns. "If word spreads to other empires, we will be laughed at. The line of Elyari, joined to a weak outsider? It is humiliation." "Agreed," added Lady Marin, another noble. "Humans have no strength. They do not live long, they do not shine with power, and they bring no noble alliances. This human is nothing but a chain dragging us down." The queen raised her hand, silencing them. "He is nothing yet, but if he proves himself unworthy, I will dissolve this union. Until then, we watch." Her eyes narrowed. "And we test." Later that day, Elias and Princess Lyari entered the training grounds of the palace. Dozens of alien warriors were gathered. Some held long crystal spears, others curved swords, and some wore heavy armor. Lord Varen stepped forward. His eyes glimmered with cruelty. "Human," he said loudly so all could hear, "if you are to stand beside our princess, then show us your strength. Duel one of my guards." The crowd murmured with approval. They wanted to see the human fall. Lyari's eyes burned with anger. "This is no fair test. You only want to humiliate him." But Elias put a hand on her arm gently. His voice was calm. "It's all right. Let him test me." He stepped into the ring. The guard who came forward was massive, even by Elyari standards. His skin shimmered with bronze, his muscles like stone. He carried a spear that hummed with energy. Elias had no weapon. "Give him a blade." Someone laughed cruelly. "At least let him lose properly." A servant tossed Elias a training sword. It was heavier than what he was used to, the balance strange in his hands. Still, he gripped it and nodded. The duel began. The guard lunged quickly, his spear striking like lightning. Elias barely dodged, the tip slicing across his jacket. The crowd laughed. The next strike came harder, forcing Elias to roll aside. He scrambled up, his heart pounding. He was slower, weaker, and his opponent had reach. But Elias had something else. He had learned to fight not on polished palace floors, but in mud, in ruins, in ambushes. He had fought pirates with nothing but broken weapons. He had survived by watching, by thinking, by refusing to quit. He waited. Each strike of the spear was faster, harder, but also more predictable. The guard relied on power, not creativity. When the next strike came, Elias twisted sideways and slammed the flat of his blade against the guard's spear, knocking it off course. The guard stumbled for half a second. It was enough. Elias closed. The distance, too near for the spear to work, and brought his sword down across the guard's wrist, not to kill, but to disarm. The spear clattered to the floor. Gasps filled the crowd. The guard growled and swung a heavy fist, but Elias ducked under it and tapped the blade against the guard's neck. Silence. Elias stepped back and lowered his sword. "I'm not here to shame anyone," he said simply. "I only defended myself." The nobles were stunned. Some scowled, others whispered, but a few looked thoughtful. Lord Varen's face twisted with anger, but he forced a smile. Beginner's luck. But everyone in the courtyard knew it was not luck. That night, Elias sat with Lyari in her private chambers. She touched the cut on his arm, her hands gentle. "You could have been killed," she whispered. He smiled. "I've been nearly killed before. This wasn't the first time, and it won't be the last." Her eyes shone with pride. "You faced them with honor. Even my mother was watching from above. She may not admit it, but she saw your courage." Elias looked at her. "Courage is easy when I have something worth fighting for." Her heart warmed at his words. She leaned against him, and for a moment, the palace walls and judging eyes melted away. The next test came days later. This time it was not combat. It was politics. The queen summoned Elias to the High Council, where nobles discussed trade, war, and law. He was given a seat, though clearly unwelcome. Lord Veyran spoke first, presenting a plan to raise taxes on small colonies to pay for new warships. The colonies exist to serve the Empire, he declared. They must sacrifice for our strength. Most nobles nodded, but Elias leaned forward. On Earth, we learned that if you burden the weak, they collapse. If the colonies are drained, they will fail, and your empire will be weaker, not stronger. A soldier cannot fight if his family starves at home. The room went silent. Some nobles scoffed. The human dares to speak of empire? Arrogant, but others exchanged glances, realizing his words carried truth. Even the queen's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. The final test came at a grand feast. Nobles gathered, dressed in silks and jewels. Servants brought trays of glowing fruits, spiced meats, and shining drinks. Lord Veyran raised his cup, smirking. Human, tell us, what does your species offer the great Eliari Empire? Your ships crawl like snails. Your weapons are outdated, your lives short. What value does a human bring? The hall erupted in cruel laughter. Elias stood slowly, his face calm. He raised his own simple cup of water. You are right, he said. The laughter grew louder, but then he continued. Humans are not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most advanced. But what we are is survivors. We adapt. We fight when we should have fallen. We build again when everything is destroyed. You think that makes us weak, but it makes us dangerous. Because you will never know what a human can do until it's too late. The hall grew quiet. His words were like steel wrapped in fire. Princess. Liari placed her hand over his, her eyes filled with pride. For the first time, Queen Saralira looked at Elias without scorn. Her expression was unreadable, but there was a flicker of something, curiosity, maybe even respect. But not everyone was silent. In the shadows of the hall, a noble whispered to another. If the queen begins to accept him, our chance is lost. We must act soon. And so, unseen by Elias or Liari, the seeds of betrayal were planted. That night, Elias stood on a balcony, looking at the stars. The galaxy stretched before him, vast, cold, and full of danger. He was an outsider here, tested, mocked, and doubted. But he was human, and humans never quit. Whatever trial the queen and her nobles threw at him, he would endure. For Liari, for the strange new future they were building together, because this was only the beginning. The palace of the Eliari Empire had not known true silence in centuries. But now, silence hung heavy in the throne room. Nobles, guards, and servants all stood still as the messenger entered, his chest heaving, his robe torn by travel. He bowed, low before Queen Saralira. Your Majesty, he gasped, the Drexian swarm has crossed the border. The throne room filled with sharp voices. Nobles shouted in alarm, some in fear, some in anger. The Drexians were not like other enemies. They were not an empire of diplomacy or pride. They were a hive, a race of insectoid creatures that consumed and destroyed every world they touched. They spread like wildfire, leaving nothing but bones and ashes behind. Impossible, said Lord Veyran, his face pale. The swarm has never dared to enter our territory before. They dare now, the messenger answered grimly. They already destroyed the colony of Theron 5. Millions are dead. The queen's hand tightened on her throne. Her voice cut through the panic. Summon the High Council. We must prepare for war. Within hours, the council chamber was alive with heated debate. We cannot face them, cried Lady Marin. The swarm is endless. Their numbers drown fleets like rivers. Drown fire, We must call for peace, another noble argued. Perhaps they will accept tribute. They do not accept tribute, said Princess Liari sharply. Her eyes flashed with anger. They only consume. If we bow, we will still be eaten. The nobles fell into silence at her words, but fear still clouded their faces. Elias Kane sat at her side, silent until now. He had listened to every word, his jaw tight. Finally, he stood. The Drexians fight like a flood, he said, his voice steady. And you are trying to stop them by building a wall. But a flood will always break the wall. The nobles frowned, confused. What do you mean, human? Lord Varen sneered. Elias looked at the gathered rulers. On Earth, we faced armies far larger than ours, empires that should have crushed us. But humans survive by fighting differently. We use deception, traps, and surprise. We don't match strength with strength. We turn the enemy's numbers against them. Some nobles scoffed. Tricks? Ambushes? That is cowardice. No, Elias said firmly. It's survival. If you fight the Drexians the way you fight each other, you will lose. But if you fight like humans fight, like survivors, you might live. The queen studied him with her sharp violet eyes. You would lead such a fight? Yes, Elias answered without hesitation. Give me a small fleet. Let me show you what humans can do. The queen considered. Around her, nobles muttered in disbelief. A human leading their ships? Madness. But there was no clear plan, no courage among them. At last, she gave a single nod. You will have your chance, human. Fail, and you will not only lose your life, you will lose my daughter as well. Elias bowed. Understood. Liari's hand tightened on his. She whispered fiercely, Don't die out there. He gave her a small smile. I've made a habit of not dying when people expect me to. Days. Later, Elias stood aboard the command deck of an Aeliari cruiser. Around him, alien officers watched him with doubtful eyes. Their screens showed the dark void of space. Somewhere out there, the Drexian swarm moved closer. Where is your strategy, human? One officer asked. Do we attack head-on? No, Elias said. That's what they want. Instead, we draw them in, make them think they are winning. He leaned over the star maps, pointing at narrow sectors filled with asteroid fields and dust clouds. Here, we hide ships among the rocks. When the swarm passes, we strike their rear, we cut their supply lines, and we never fight their full. Force at once! We hit them in pieces! The officers exchanged doubtful looks. To them, war was honor and direct strength. But Elias's confidence forced them to obey. The first battle came quickly. A Drexian scouting fleet of dozens of living insectoid ships crawled into Aeliari space. Their vessels looked alive. Chitin shells, glowing green veins, wings of energy, buzzing in the void. The Aeliari captains wanted to charge. Elias stopped them. Wait, he ordered. Hold position. The Drexians advanced, sensing weakness. Then, just as they passed the asteroid field, hidden mines exploded, tearing through. Their wings. From behind the rocks, Aeliari ships emerged, striking at their rear. The swarm scattered in confusion. Within minutes, the Drexian fleet was in flames. The officers stared in shock. It worked. Elias only nodded. That's the beginning. We bleed them, one cut at a time. News spread quickly across the empire. Whispers filled the palace. The human led them to victory. He fights like no alien. Perhaps there is more to him than we thought. But not all were pleased. Lord Varen seethed in secret. If he wins, he becomes a hero. If he becomes a hero, the queen may accept him. We cannot allow this. His plots deepened, even as the war grew darker. Weeks passed. More battles followed. Again and again, Elias used strange human tactics, decoys, ambushes, sabotage, where alien admirals would have fought glorious but costly battles. Elias fought dirty, and he won. The Drexians began to slow. Their swarms, once endless, now hesitated at the borders, wary of the traps that waited. Yet each victory came with risk. Elias nearly lost his fleet in one ambush when the Drexians adapted, using smaller ships to bait him. In the end, he barely escaped with half his force. But even in failure, his courage burned. He stood on the bridge, bloodied, exhausted, and said, "We're still alive. That means we can still fight. And as long as we fight, they'll bleed." His words spread among the soldiers. To the aliens who once mocked him, Elias Kane became a symbol. The human who would not break. Back in the palace, Princess Liari watched the reports with pride. Her mother remained stern, but Liari noticed the queen no longer spoke of dissolving the marriage. Instead, Sarah Lyra watched in silence, her sharp eyes unreadable. One night, Liari met Elias after he returned from another battle. His armor was scorched, his hands trembling from fatigue. She rushed to him, embracing him tightly. "You've done what no one thought possible," she whispered. "Even my mother is beginning to see." Elias rested his forehead against hers. "This isn't over. The swarm will strike harder. They won't stop until they break us." "Then we will not break," Liari said fiercely. "We fight together." Her words gave him strength. For the first time since the war began, Elias allowed himself a small spark of hope. But hope was fragile. The Drexians launched a massive assault on the border world of Krios. Hundreds of their living ships poured from the void darkening the stars. The Elyari fleet, under Elias's command, rushed to meet them. On the bridge, alarms blared. Officers panicked. "There are too many," one cried. "We cannot hold them," shouted another. Elias stood tall, his eyes fixed on the growing swarm. His voice cut through the fear. "Listen to me. Numbers don't matter. What matters is will. We will hit them where they are weakest. We will not face them all at once. We'll split them, confuse them, make them chase shadows, and we will survive, because that's what humans do. We survive." The crew steadied. Their fear turned to determination. The battle began. Elias's fleet darted through asteroid belts, using the rocks as shields. Decoy ships lured Drexian forces into traps. Explosive charges turned debris into deadly shrapnel. Again and again the swarm pushed forward, only to be split and shattered. By the time the battle ended, the skies burned with Drexian wreckage. Krios was saved. For now. When Elias returned to the palace, the throne room was silent as he entered. The queen studied him for a long moment, then finally spoke. "You are still alive, and so is my empire. Perhaps there is more to your kind than I believed." It was not praise, not fully, but it was a step. Elias bowed. "I told you, humans don't quit," the nobles whispered, some in awe, some in resentment. The human was no longer just the princess's strange husband. He was becoming something more, a commander, a symbol, a threat. And in the shadows, Lord Varen clenched his fists. His hatred grew sharper. Because if Elias Kane kept winning, the human would not only save the Empire, he might one day stand beside the throne itself. The galaxy had gone dark before, but never like this. From the far edges of space, the Drexian swarm poured forward in endless waves. Where once Elias Kane had beaten small fleets and scattered attacks, now the hive came in full force. Their massive ships blotted out the stars, their buzzing signals jamming every channel. They were no longer testing the Elyari Empire. They were here to destroy it, and their target was clear, the capital world itself. The shadow over the capital queen Sarah Lyra's throne room shook as alarms echoed through the palace. Commanders shouted reports, each worse than the last. The outer fleets are falling back. The swarm is advancing in thousands. They are heading straight for us. The nobles panicked. Some demanded retreat to hidden fortresses. Others begged for surrender. The queen's eyes narrowed in fury, but even her calm face could not hide the fear in her heart. Princess Liari stood tall, her silver hair catching the light of the emergency beacons. "We cannot surrender," she said firmly. "If the capital falls, the empire falls with it." Her words silenced the chamber, but no one offered a plan. And then Elias Kane stepped forward. "We can fight them," he said. His voice was calm, steady, cutting through the storm. "But not with your usual ways. If we try to face them ship for ship, we'll be crushed. We need to fight like humans fight, clever, fast, and unpredictable." The nobles sneered. "You? A human leading us? Madness!" But the queen lifted her hand for silence. She studied Elias for a long moment. He was dirty from battles, his uniform scorched, his eyes tired but burning with fire. He looked nothing like a noble commander. And yet, her empire had survived, only because of him. "Very well," she said at last. "The fleet is yours." Gasps filled the hall. Elias bowed his head. "I won't let you regret it." Rallying humanity, Elias knew he could not win with Aliari forces alone. Their fleets were strong, but their commanders still thought in straight lines. Against the Drexian swarm, straight lines meant death, so he reached out beyond the empire. He sent desperate calls to Earth, to Mars, to the small human colonies scattered across the stars, and humanity answered. Rusty warships, old freighters turned into gunboats, small patrol craft, all came rushing in. They were nothing compared to the gleaming crystal ships of the Aliari, but they carried something more valuable than firepower. They carried human grit. When they arrived at the capital, Aliari nobles laughed. "These are your reinforcements? Weak, outdated ships?" But Elias only smiled. "Don't judge them by their hulls. Judge them by the people inside." Preparing the trap, the swarm approached like a storm cloud, thousands of Drexian ships buzzing, together in deadly harmony. Elias stood over the star maps with both human and Aliari officers around him. His finger traced the capital system. "They expect us to defend this planet at all costs, so we won't." Confusion spread among the commanders. Elias explained, "We will lure them in close, then hit them from every side. Humans will strike from the shadows. Aliari from the front. We'll divide the swarm, make them chase ghosts. And then, when they are tangled and blind, we finish them." It was a dangerous plan, risky, desperate, but it was the only chance. The battle of the capital, when the swarm arrived, the skies turned black. Their organic ships swarmed like locusts, blotting out stars with wings of burning light. Elias's voice rang across every channel. "This is Elias Kane. To all soldiers, human and Aliari, you fight today not just for survival, but for tomorrow. Hold your lines, trust each other, and remember, we don't quit." The fleets roared forward. The first clash shook the system. Drexian claws ripped through Aliari shields, insectoid ships biting into cruisers like wolves. Explosions lit the void. But then, the trap began. From asteroid belts, human ships darted out, firing missiles into the swarm's rear. From hidden moons, sabotage drones attacked supply vessels. Aliari fleets pulled back suddenly, drawing the swarm deeper into Elias's web. The Drexians grew confused. Their perfect hive formation broke apart as they chased scattered targets. That was when Elias struck hardest. "Now!" he shouted. The combined fleets turned and hit the swarm in the center. Explosions rocked space as Drexian ships tore apart, their green ichor spilling into the void. The turning point, but the swarm was endless. For every ship destroyed, more came. The Aliari lines began to buckle. Human ships exploded under heavy fire. On the flagship, alarms screamed. Officers shouted. "We can't hold them!" "They're breaking through!" Elias gritted his teeth. He refused to back down. "We're not done yet. They think they're hunters. Let's show them what prey can do when it fights back." He ordered a bold maneuver, splitting the fleet into smaller groups, each striking from different angles. It was chaos, but it was human chaos. The Drexians, used to order and swarming tactics, struggled to adapt. Still, the cost was terrible. Elias's own ship shook violently as Drexian fire slammed into it. Sparks flew, consoles shattered, smoke filled the air. Princess Liari, fighting aboard another cruiser, heard his voice over the comms. He was calm, steady, even as death closed. "In! Keep fighting! Don't stop! Every second we live is another second they bleed." A desperate gamble. As the battle raged, Elias saw the truth. The swarm's central hive ship had entered the system. It was massive, a monstrous creature the size of a moon, its body pulsing with green fire. As long as it lived, the swarm would not stop. Elias made his decision. He gathered his human fleet, the smallest and weakest ships, and gave the order no one expected. "We're going in, straight for the hive." The Yari commanders cried out in disbelief. "You'll be slaughtered." But Elias only smiled grimly. "Maybe, but if we take down that hive, the rest will fall apart." His fleet of battered human ships surged forward. They weaved through Drexian fire, shields burning, hulls cracking, but they refused to stop. One by one, human captains rammed enemy ships, clearing the path for Elias's flagship. At the final moment, Elias's ship charged straight into the hive's core, launching every missile, every torpedo, every explosive charge at once. The hive ship screamed, a sound that shook the stars, and then it exploded, its burning pieces scattering across the system. The swarm froze. Without the hive's command, their unity broke. Yari and human fleets surged forward, striking them down. The battle was won. Victory and cost when the fires finally faded. The capital still stood. The swarm was broken. Cheers erupted across the fleets, from humans and aliens alike. But Elias's ship was drifting, battered and silent. For a terrible moment, Princess Liari feared he was gone. She rushed aboard with a rescue team, her heart pounding. She found him on the bridge, bloodied but alive, leaning against the console with a tired smile. "Told you," he whispered. "I don't quit." Liari threw her arms around him, tears falling freely. "You fool! You stubborn, impossible fool!" But her voice was full of pride. The Queen's judgment back in the throne room, silence fell as Elias entered, supported by Liari. Every noble bowed their heads, some in shame, some in respect. Even Lord Veyran could not speak, his face pale with fury. Queen Sarah Lyra looked at the human long and hard. For the first time, her stern expression softened. "You saved my empire," she said slowly. "Not with strength of arms, but with strength of will. Perhaps I was wrong to doubt your kind." Elias bowed. "I didn't save it alone. Humans and Aliari fought together. That's the only reason we survived." The Queen's lips curved, just slightly. "Perhaps you are more than just a stranger in my court. Perhaps you are worthy." Liari's smile shone like a star. Elias squeezed her hand. For the first time, he felt not just like an outsider who had married a princess, but like someone who belonged. But deep in the shadows, Lord Veyran's hatred only grew. The galaxy was quiet again, but not safe. The Drexian swarm had retreated, but their shadow still lingered over the stars. The Aliari Empire was scarred, their fleets weakened, and their people shaken. Inside the palace, the air was heavy. Nobles whispered in corners, plotting, scheming, and complaining. The humans who had come to help were still here, cleaning debris and repairing ships. And at the center of it all stood Elias Kane, the human who had saved the Empire. Princess Liari never left his side. She walked beside him in the grand halls, proud, yet aware of the tension around them. Her mother, Queen Lyra, watched carefully, her violet eyes sharp as ever. A threat from within, not everyone celebrated the humans' victory. Lord Veyran, bitter and furious, had gathered a group of nobles who still refused to accept Elias. "He has no right," Veyran hissed. "He is a human, a weak outsider. The empire is ours, not his. He stole the princess, and now he steals our glory." Another noble whispered, "If he survives one more trial, the queen may give him power beyond all of us. We cannot allow that." Veyran's plan was simple but dangerous. Strike when Elias was off guard, discredit him, and force the queen to annul the marriage. Elias faces politics. The next morning, Queen Lyra summoned Elias to the throne room. He entered with Liari at his side. The nobles were present, their eyes full of judgment. "Human," the queen said, her voice calm but commanding. "You have fought well. You have saved our empire. But leadership is more than courage in battle. You must prove you understand our laws, our people, and our ways." Elias bowed. "I understand, Your Majesty. I've learned much, but I will do whatever is needed to serve the empire." Lord Veyran rose immediately. "Your Majesty, he is unfit. A human cannot understand the honor, the legacy, the responsibility of ruling with the blood of Aeliari. He is dangerous, and he threatens our traditions." The chamber erupted in murmurs and accusations, but Elias remained calm. "I am not here to erase traditions," he said. "I am here to strengthen them. I have fought to keep your empire alive. If that is not proof enough, then show me a task, a test, anything that proves I can serve the throne and the people." The queen considered, then nodded. "Very well. You will lead a mission to rebuild the colonies destroyed by the Drexians. If you can restore them in one cycle, with peace, order, and prosperity, you will earn the Empire's trust, not just mine, but all who doubt you." Elias's eyes narrowed with determination. "I accept." Rebuilding the empire over the next cycle, Elias led human and Aeliari engineers, soldiers, and administrators across the devastated colonies. They rebuilt cities, repaired fleets, and restored trade routes. He listened to the colonists, even learning their customs, and helped negotiate disputes between alien races and humans. His human ingenuity shone. He designed systems that maximized efficiency, organized defense fleets to prevent future attacks, and even trained local militias to protect themselves. The Aeliari nobles who accompanied him were forced to respect his skills. His humans adapted, quickly teaching aliens new methods of construction, farming, and combat. By the end of the cycle, the colonies were thriving again. Trade resumed. Ships flew once more between planets. Smiles returned to the faces of people who had seen only despair. When the group returned to the capital, the people hailed Elias. Even some of the skeptical nobles applauded his leadership. The betrayal, but Lord Veyran was not defeated. He had waited, and now he made his move. During a council meeting, he accused Elias of using humans to manipulate the colonies for Earth's gain. "He cannot be trusted. He puts his species above ours," he shouted. The queen's eyes narrowed. "Evidence?" Veyran produced forged reports, falsified messages, and fake witnesses. The chamber erupted into chaos. Many nobles believed him. For the first time, Elias faced a threat not of aliens or Drexians, but of politics. He could see Liari's eyes burning with worry, but he held her hand tightly. "We fight this too," he whispered. He rose to address the council. His voice was calm but sharp. "You accuse me without proof. You twist words and data. I have fought for your people, protected your empire, and rebuilt your colonies. Judge me by what I have done, not by lies." Then Elias did something no Elyari expected. He called forward the humans who had served him. "Tell them the truth," he said. One by one, human engineers, soldiers, and administrators testified. They showed records, logs, and videos of Elias's actions. They proved that everything Veyran accused him of was false. The nobles fell silent. The queen's eyes studied Veyran. "You plotted against the one who saved us all," she said coldly. "You dared use lies to destroy honor." Veyran's face turned pale, and for the first time he looked afraid. "You are banished," the queen said, "from this empire and from the royal court. Any who follow you will face the same punishment." Recognition at last with Veyran removed, the court fell silent. Then, slowly, nobles began to bow to Elias, acknowledging his courage, his wisdom, and his honor. Princess Liari stepped forward. "Mother," she said, her voice strong, "this is the man I chose. This is the man who fought for our empire. He is not just my husband. He is worthy of all our respect." Queen Saralera studied Elias long and hard. Finally, she spoke. "You are human, and yet you have done what few Elyari could. You have courage, wisdom, and honor. You are worthy." She stood and gestured to the throne beside hers. "Let him sit here, at my side, not just as a husband to the princess, but as a protector and advisor to the empire." Elias knelt, then rose again, bowing to the queen. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I will serve the empire faithfully." Liari smiled brightly, tears in her eyes. She stepped to him and took his hand. "I told you, humans never quit." Elias laughed softly. "And we never give up hope, a future together." Over the following months, Elias became a symbol not just of the human race, but of courage, ingenuity, and unity. He trained fleets, advised governors, and worked with humans and aliens together. The colonies he helped rebuild flourished. The Elyari Empire grew stronger, not just in ships or weapons, but in the hearts of its people. Princess Liari never left his side. Together they faced challenges, celebrated victories, and stood as a living example that courage, love, and determination can cross any barrier, even the gulf between species. Even the youngest aliens spoke of the human who saved the empire. And even the most skeptical nobles began to follow his example, learning that true strength does not always shine like crystal. It sometimes shines in the heart and will of one person. The final reflection. One night, Elias and Liari stood on the balcony of the palace, looking out at the stars. The city below was alive with light, ships flying, and people going about their lives. Liari leaned against him. "Do you ever regret coming here?" she asked. Elias shook his head. "Not for a second. I came for you. I stayed for them. And I fought because I had to. That's what humans do. That's what we were made for." Liari smiled, brushing her hand against his cheek. "You've changed this empire forever." He looked out at the stars, thinking of Earth, the colonies, and all the battles they had faced. We've all changed, it together. Humans, Elyari, anyone willing to fight and never give up, that's what matters. The queen had accepted him, the empire had survived, and the human who had been called an outsider now stood as a hero, a husband, a protector, and a legend, because sometimes all it takes is one human with courage, determination, and love to change the fate of the stars.